Okay, 6:45 here on the programme. President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday addressed the Mining Indaba, which is currently underway in Cape Town. He took this opportunity to try and woo investors, mining investors particularly, but also had his say about Eskom. So let's unpack all of this now. With me in studio, we've got the Chief Economist at Econometrix and a great guest here for us on Morning Live, Azar Jammine. Also joining the conversation is Professor Tracy-Lynn Field, who is with the Wits Law School and specialises in mining. So good to have both of you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask both of you the same question to begin with. Your impressions on the speech. Tracy, I'll begin with you. As we say, this is the very first time a sitting president has addressed the Mining Indaba, which actually surprises me. I always thought that that would be one of the key events on the president's calendar. So this is the first time. What did you make of it?
So, in short, I think predictable, but disappointing and limitless.
Oh my.
Limiting.
Okay.
We have a business-friendly president addressing a set of investors. President Ramaphosa spoke about a very traditional, I think, conservative model for governing the mining industry. But he is in a particular political space, and this is what he needed to do, and he did that well.
Yeah.
Business Live has talked about a resounding speech that hit all the right notes, and for a particular community of people, it did. But there are also big gaps in his speech.
Which I'm going to get into and ask you what you think they are. Azar?
I totally concur with that analysis, and I think one needs to focus on the gaps, because those gaps are precisely the issues that may dissuade investment into the South African mining industry the way I don't think he is going to succeed to the extent that he might have hoped. Having said that, it's nice to see a president going to that conference and trying to encourage. I mean, the guys, Ramaphosa is really going out of his way to market South Africa. But, you know, people cannot be hoodwinked. There are major impediments, and those remain. And it's not easy to gloss over them.
Okay. Just in short, Tracy, do you think he did enough, though, to secure confidence from the investors?
He tried very hard. He's talking about establishing a stable and predictable policy and regulatory framework. He was very keen to link it to the African Free Trade Agreement and regional integration. But as my colleague beside me is saying, there are concerns that weren't addressed, and those, I think, need to be opened up.
Okay, let's talk about them. So those gaps, Tracy, that you're referring to, what are they? What are the gaping gaps there?
So for me, the president was a constant theme in his speech was collaboration, cooperation, and working together.
Yeah.
And he referenced the investors, the government, the trade unions, and communities just came in little, just marginally. He spoke about a leadership compact that had been signed between business and labor and the government. But the problems with communities, which are significant, and our recent Constitutional Court judgments in November of last year, the Tereleng case, the Baleni case, which says that our communities have the right to consent to mining. So there was absolutely no mention of that, and I think that really needs to be addressed, and communities need to be brought on as equal partners if there is supposed to be inclusive growth, as the president was so keen to emphasize.
Yeah. Okay, so that for you was the biggest gap. You mentioned there were impediments as well, Azar. What are you referring to?
For me, the big impediment is the militancy and destructive militancy that we've been seeing on the part of labor in the mining sector. There is no way that you're going to get foreign investment coming into mining when they know that labor, first of all, is relatively expensive in relation to the productivity that is generated, and secondly, in terms of the way it's been going about handling things. I think it's been underplayed in South Africa the past year, the extent to which industrial action in an environment of high unemployment has really just gone crazy and been destructive. It's not just going on strike, it's actually destroying property as well.
Yeah. So let's dig deep into what you said, Tracy, because during the speech, President said significant work has been done to remove uncertainty that held back the developments of the mining industry. He went on to say of a talk of strained relations where the courts became the main platform in government and, between government and industry. The relationship now between government, between Labour and between the unions, or Labour and the unions is the same thing, and the mining houses, how is it looking? Or is that still that strained relationship that we're very worried about?
So I'd rather concur to Dr. Azar on the issue around labour. I think the relationship between government and the companies, the investors, is looking better because the mining charter has been taken out of the courts. That was the biggest issue, and that is now, that is being settled. And the president is moving away from the neo-extractivist path that we were on, taking out of the provision in the Mining Act around free carried interest, the route that some of our South American counterparts and other African countries have gone around in resource nationalism. We're now much more clearly in a model of private-led mining investment, which has, for the large part, been the model in South Africa. We're not moving to a situation of state-led mining investment, which is, I think, reassuring for investors. So I think that relationship is possibly better.
Yeah. I mean, we are out of a technical recession. That's where we are as South Africa right now. Mining, one of our biggest industries, if not our biggest industry, a big employer. What does the president need to secure in order to benefit more from mining?
I think you need a complete change in the mindset of not only the president, but also the actual employers and the workers to start getting on better together. And the forces that are actually creating these tensions are very deep-seated and go back many decades. Unfortunately, what you've got is a situation where the workers themselves do not understand that their actions ultimately might lead to the extinction of the domestic mining sector, the way things have been going.
Yeah.
And even to today, you mentioned we've come out of recession, but the mining sector growth is still negative. And when I look at gold mining in particular, down to just over 100 tons a year. When I began working in this country, we were producing 1,000 tons of gold a year. We're down to nearly 1/10 of what we were.
That's a significant drop, and a very worrying drop at that. I want to also address now something that I think a lot of people were concerned about, and maybe one of the big reasons why the president did go there, and that's the issue of land expropriation, because wherever he's been, he's had to address this big elephant in the room. So he mentioned land expropriation without compensation, with big worries from investors also in Davos. How is this issue hampering the mining industry? Azar, can I ask you that, and then I'm going to ask you another angle on that one.
Without a doubt, land expropriation without compensation the debate around it has really destroyed the possibility of Ramaphosa attracting the investment that he would like, for the simple reason that international investors see it very simply as an impairment of property rights, and they don't like that at all. Ramaphosa, from the word go, even from the day he was actually elected president of the ANC, has gone out of his way to try and say, yes, we will expropriate land, but under certain circumstances and with due deference to food security. We're not going to do anything to upset food security, etc. But it's very difficult for the outside world to overcome, or to just accept all those provisos, as opposed to the general concept of taking land away without paying for it. And unfortunately, both the left and the right wing of the political spectrum have been playing on this and heightening emotions around it in such a way that the investor community has been dissuaded from investing in the country. And as much as Ramaphosa tries to overcome this, it's really a heavy weight on his back to try and throw it off.
Yeah. Tracy, we talk about, especially our president goes out there and he's constantly speaking about it, reassuring investors, saying that the approach will enhance rather than undermine property rights, as we seek to address the original sin which was committed against black South Africans during colonial apartheid days. And that I quote from him. Property rights in terms of mines, because that's a big thing. They were mainly situated in land that belonged to the communities there in the areas that were forced off of the land. So how do you find that balance, and how is it going to work?
So, Yes, essentially what President Ramaphosa said was that it won't undermine property rights. And property rights are absolutely central to the model of mining that he is promoting. First, the investor's right to exploit. I don't think the mining rights are also a special kind of right. They're not the same as land rights. They're different types of rights. But I don't think the president did enough to talk about the land people who were dispossessed of land in the apartheid area. He talks about the original sin, but those informal land rights, which the courts have now affirmed, it would have been better if he just tackled that directly, I think, and had some position, because you can't say property rights are going to be protected and then on the same hand have informal land rights that you say nothing about.
Yeah, let's wrap it up quickly. We've got the State of the Nation that's happening tomorrow. From the business front, what are you hoping the president will say?
I think he's already given us the heads up with the speech yesterday. I think a lot of the State of the Nation address will cover exactly the same ground. What business really wants to see is a little more on how the president is going to get rid of corruption, the savings that can be made and redeployed to other areas, and people will also be really closely watching what he says about how to sort out Eskom and other state-owned enterprises.
He alluded to Eskom yesterday.
He alluded to it, but there wasn't too much detail.
Okay.
They're going to be looking for a little more detail and direction on that.
All right, that's a big one. And then just finally, as a lawyer, you know, just looking at some of the social impacts of mining and some of the mining, the houses that are there operating, do they look after the communities enough? And I mean, I think that issue is something that needs to be addressed urgently.
Correct. And the model that going forward is President Ramaphosa ended his speech with the 10 leading principles, 10 commandments of responsible mining, and I think that's the model going forward. We're not going to have strong-armed regulation. It's going to depend on the goodwill of companies to make sure that their workers are housed with dignity, that environmental impacts on our water and our air are taken care of. We're putting a lot of faith and trust in the mining industry.
All right, we leave it there. Thank you, both of you, for joining us here on the program, giving us a little bit of a diagnosis of the speech from our president yesterday. As Azar said, perhaps a preamble of what to expect for SONA tomorrow. Both of you, thank you very, very much for joining us here on the program. Azar Jammine of Econometrix, and also our lawyer joining us talking about that was Tracy-Lynn Field, who's with the Wits Law School. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's take